What's going on, folks? Episode 4, pushing on the strong. Appreciate you guys bearing with me. I'm still getting the hang of how I want to do this YouTube channel, but I'm having a lot of fun just kind of coming in and talking about the things that I want to talk about. So, episode 4, like I was saying, today I want to talk about operant conditioning. Now, operant conditioning was one of the most technical and kind of weird and challenging things that I had to learn. It sounds super complex, and essentially it's the basis of all learning. It's like the big thing. It's, you know, it's Pavlov, it's your Skinner's box kind of thing, you know. And again, you can look all this stuff up, and realistically you don't need to understand it so much, but it's good to understand it so that you can know what other trainers are talking about. Most of the time when you hear dog trainers and like at the highest levels, dog trainers are going to speak in these terms, right? Operant conditioning, so talking about positive and negative, as well as reinforcement and punishment, right? So I wanted to kind of clarify in my own words what it really means and kind of give a couple examples, right? So it's a quadrant, right? So you have a quadrant, 4 squares. On one side you have your reinforcements, on the other side you have your punishments, and each side has positive and negative. So think about it more like positive is you're adding something, and negative is you're removing something. And then reinforcement is obviously something is likely to happen again, and you know, punishment is something that's less likely to happen again as a result of, right? So you have positive reinforcement. That's you're adding a treat, and because you added a treat, whatever behavior it was associated with, it's going to happen again. So this is your basic, your dog sits down, you pay him for it, positive reinforcement. Because you added the treat, it's going to reinforce that they sat down and they got the treat, so they're probably going to sit down again once they hear you say sit, right? That's that reinforcement. Then you have positive punishment. So now what are you adding? You're adding a punishment. So this is when you see like a pop on the leash, you add stim on an e-collar, you know, you flick your dog's nose or something like that because they did something. This is positive punishment. I'm adding a correction. I'm adding some adversive to discourage the punishment, to discourage something from happening again. So this is my dog barks at my significant other, barks at my parents, or barks at my friend that comes in through the door. Okay, so I correct them, I flick them on the nose or something like that, or I pop them on the leash. Okay, I'm adding this correction, positive, and this punishment, that adversive, whatever, flicking them on the nose, or that discomfort from getting popped on the leash is going to discourage them from doing this again. Now, negative reinforcement, this is where we're removing something in the hopes of encouraging and reinforcing some sort of behavior. So this is your leash pressure, right? This is where, and we could use an e-collar for this as well, but this is basically, I am going to put a little bit of tension on the leash when my dog is pulling. They're pulling me down the street. Most dogs tend to pull, so it's like you have a little puppy. Let's talk about it. The dog pulls. We're walking down the street. The dog pulls. I stop. I'm going to put tension on the leash. The moment the dog yields to that leash or moves back a little bit, I remove that pressure. What ends up happening? That removal of the pressure is going to encourage the dog to stay within the confines or within the limits of the leash to avoid this discomfort of the leash pressure, right? So that tension causes some sort of discomfort via the collar on the dog. Us doing this enough times to where I add pressure and they move back and I remove it, add pressure, they move back, I remove it. they're going to start understanding that, hey, for me to avoid this discomfort, it's going for the dog it gets reinforced that the dog should stay within the confines of the leash or the limits of the leash so that they can avoid this discomfort. Negative reinforcement. Then we have negative punishment. This is where we're removing, and I talked about this in episode 2, I believe, when you remove something that the dog wants, a toy, a treat, food, whatever, the ball, the dog really wants the treat. Or the dog, I tell the dog to sit and they lay down. I say, and I remove the treat, and then that's a correction to them, essentially. That's a punishment because I'm removing something that they really wanted. This is going to discourage them from hearing sit and giving me a down. Now they're going to be paying more attention. Now they're going to be, okay, what do I do? What do I do, right? Now, this is all sounds super complicated, but this is essentially how we train all sort of any type of behavior, any type of command, any type of whatever, obedience. This is how we teach it with dogs, right? Now, I had a friend of mine, I was talking to him about this, and he said one of the ways to understand this is reinforcement is sort of a way where the dog learns on their own, and punishment is when we add some sort of input, right? So I thought it was really interesting to look at it that way, right? Because in every situation when we do this, it's either we are involved in the process or the dog is figuring it out on their own, right? So we talked about positive punishment. What did the dog do? They had to do they did something, they misbehaved, they barked at somebody, they reacted, whatever. We added that correction. We had some sort of input in that situation for the dog to learn. As opposed to positive reinforcement, the dog did a behavior and then they got paid for it. That's them coming to that eureka moment on their own. Same on the other side of the quadrant, right? And we have negative reinforcement, right? Because they moved in the direction of the pressure from the leash, they realized that, hey, I removed this tension, and if I stay within the confines of the limits of this leash, I am not going to get this discomfort feeling, this uncomfortable feeling. That's their self-realization of this. And again, now negative punishment, this is us physically removing this valuable object the dog finds valuable, and we have to put our input to let the dog know, hey, this is not what I was looking for. So I thought it was a really interesting way to look at that situation. And these are all things that we can keep in mind when we're training. There's a lot of different ways to do this. So if my dog, for example, is whining, I can put a little bit of tension on the leash, and then the moment they stop whining, I remove the tension. Okay, this is doing what, right? This is negative reinforcement, right? I'm removing that tension once they give the behavior that I want to reinforce them not whining, right? And we can get creative with this a lot of different ways, right? But this is essentially how we train dogs. So when you hear these terms, make sure that you don't get super intimidated by how technical it sounds. And look into, your basic, your Pavlovs, your, Skinner's box. Look at Operant Conditioning. There's a bunch of videos and stuff like that online that you could look into. And, it's very, very, in application, it's a lot easier than it is in theory, if you will. But I wanted to make a video on this because I know that it was a big complication for me, and it was a little bit confusing for me at first. to kind of understand it, but it really is easy. It really is easy, especially when you actually start doing these things and applying them. It makes a lot of sense. So remember, guys, positive, I'm adding something. Negative, I'm removing something. Reinforcement, I'm trying to encourage this behavior to happen again. Punishment, I'm trying to discourage this behavior from ever happening again. So I hope that helps, guys. Make sure to follow Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all say my dog call. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video, and let me know in the comments what you guys would like to know more of. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have any observations, things that you would like to see, things that you would like to hear, please let me know. I would love to oblige. So take it easy, guys. See you next time.